goodness, it happened. Dejounte Murray has been traded from the San Antonio Spurs in a deal with the Atlanta Hawks. Welcome, everyone, to Utility Sports. Absolutely crazy what just went down. I just got done recording a video and posting a video on the potential trade of Dejounte Murray. And 5 minutes after the video gets posted, we have an actual trade. Dejounte Murray has been dealt. We're going to talk about this deal and more. I'm absolutely blown away. Welcome, everyone, to the stream. If you are new to Utility Sports, hit that like button and also subscribe. Absolutely blown away with what just went down in the NBA. Crazy, crazy turn of events. I honestly can't express how insane this is. The fact that Dejounte Murray is getting dealt. First of all, I know there's been rumblings and rumors. There's a lot of times that there's been rumblings and rumors and really nothing happens, especially when we're talking about a young all-star guard. Quite frankly, I thought there was no way that Dejounte Murray was actually going to realistically get dealt this offseason. I thought maybe this is the preliminary, to the fact that maybe at some point he can get. He's 25 years old. He's 25, and they traded him already. That's insane to me. I know he's a little bit older than some of the other guys, and they've got a lot of other good players there in San Antonio that I think are coming along. But I am shocked. Let's go ahead and talk about the deal here. Adrian Wojnarowski reports the Atlanta Hawks are trading Danilo Gallinari and multiple first-round picks to the San Antonio Spurs for all-star guard Dejounte Murray, sources tell ESPN. And now at this point, we are waiting. We are trying to figure out what the compensation exactly entails. My guess is there's going to be 2 or 3 firsts and 2 or 3 pick swaps. Welcome, everyone, to the live stream in here. And Atlanta Analyst, I thought about you right away. I knew you were going to be super excited. He's been watching the channel here for quite some time, I think since the NBA trade deadline. And he says, in Travis Schlenk, we trust. And I totally understand why. And now Nathan here has a question about Murray at shooting guard. Yes, essentially, but you could also look at Trae Young being, a pseudo shooting guard with his ability to stretch the floor. The two of them can do a lot of different stuff, and I think the biggest thing, and I've been talking about this on the channel for quite some time, Atlanta needed another ball handler who could play make for others, and they finally got that here in Dejounte Murray. Throughout most of my mock drafts, when we were going through pick 16, I was looking for either defense or a point guard. They got both in one deal. They got a 6'5" guard who can handle, play make for others, put the ball in the hoop, and defend. This seems like a huge win just on the outside looking in right now. And we do have an update here on the deal. The news are coming out, or the news is coming out right now. Let's go ahead and check Wojnarowski's Twitter because that's where he just tweeted. I'm giving you my live reaction right now as we speak. Go give us a follow on Twitter as well. And he says the Hawks are sending a 2023 first-round pick via Charlotte, their own 2025 and 2027 firsts to the Spurs in the deal. Spurs also get a pick swap in 2026. Okay, so my expectation was 3 firsts and 2 pick swaps. Looks like they got 3 firsts and 1 pick swap. And I'm gonna give my live grade here as we go. If you guys are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Also, subscribe for more NBA content and leave a like on today's live stream. And here we have some Spurs fans say, I'm sad and disappointed. I'm a Spurs fan. I don't know what the Spurs are doing right now. Here's a funny one. Sharif Cooper at center, potentially. Grizzly says, yes, asking about they still have Collins. Yep, John Collins is staying in Atlanta. No Onyeka here. We get a little bit of disappointment maybe and confusion about the trade. There's a lot going on right now. We have some upset Spurs fans, it seems like. Delio says they hate this trade for both teams. Not a fan of both teams. Interesting. Well, Atlanta fans got to be super excited. Gallinari here is a nothing in this deal. Not to be rude. He makes the money work. Okay. That's really all Danilo Gallinari's doing in this deal for me. There's no real point that he's here in this trade. And yes, they got a bunch of picks. I'm sorry. This is a terrible trade for San Antonio. This is absolutely terrible. They get a first from Charlotte next year. That pick alone is not really that valuable. Okay, let's say that pick works out and they pick 10. I'd rather have Dejounte Murray on my team than whoever you're going to draft at 10 next year. Yes, it's a really good class. Yes, I love Cam Whitmore out of Villanova. Yes, I love a lot of the kids coming out of 2023. They're not going to be as good as Dejounte Murray, who, yes, Dejounte Murray just got traded. I think this is a huge loss for the San Antonio Spurs. I really do. This is mind-blowing to me. Welcome everyone to the stream. No Limit Matthew, thank you for the comment. Burn Hypixel says, I hate this trade, and I can't blame you. Absolutely shocking what just went down. By the way, tomorrow we will be live for all of NBA free agency. We're going to be live in the morning and live all day long for the start of NBA free agency, as well as having other videos on the channel. This is crazy. And here Utadog says, Spurs ticket sales going to drop probably. Mudbone here maybe makes a good point. Spurs trying to tank for Wembanyama. That's the type of move it looks like here. Wembanyama, 7'3" special player, but you don't want to get into the habit of trading all-stars for a chance, a 14% chance at best for Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, he's a great player, but Dejounte Murray, there's no guarantee trading him gets you him. For me right now, this is a mess. This is a serious mess for the San Antonio Spurs. I'm going to give out my grades here now in just 1 second. I am just blown away, honestly. Let's talk about my grades here now. My grades. First of all, for the Atlanta Hawks, I'm giving them an A. Not an A+, not an A-, a flat A. And the reason why, they got easily the best player in the deal. I don't even think anyone's going to combat that at all. That's a no-brainer. But it's more than that. He's a player that not only fits their needs, but fits next to their star. Dejounte Murray, we haven't seen him play off the ball a ton up to this point, but he's got some of the skill sets that you're looking for in terms of what he can do next to a Trae Young. I think that the game's going to be a lot easier for Dejounte playing next to Trae Young, just like it is for every player playing next to Trae Young. Trae Young is such an elite point guard, such an elite passer and decision maker and floor general, and obviously shooter, that he pulls so much attention to him. Dejounte Murray is not going to know what to do with how much space he's going to have on the floor now. Everything is going to be way, way easier for him. Spurs did not do good in this. This is not a good trade for San Antonio. Those 3 first, and this is the issue. Everyone follows the Sam Presti train of thought that, oh, let's get all these draft picks and we have options. Yes, optionality is awesome in the NBA, but this is a great point right here. The picks, if you make the playoffs, become diminished assets. Not that they're useless. I don't think that they mean nothing, but they are diminished. And Atlanta, I'm sorry, is going to be a playoff team. This is a potential F- trade. Now, I don't think it will be. I don't think it's an F-, but for my own grade, I'm going to give it a D. This is a D trade for San Antonio. The 2023 first from Charlotte, at best, it's probably pick 10, unless you get some serious lottery luck, which probably you're going to have better chance with your own selection, San Antonio. So, pick 10, maybe. You look at the 2025 first. Okay. DeJounte's 25 years old. By 2025, he'll be 28. He'll be in the heart of his prime. Trae Young's going to be like 26 in 2025. That team is going to be young, dominant, good. Atlanta is a really good team. Onyeka Okongwu showed a lot toward the end of the season. I just got done recording a video talking about how Dejounte Murray, if he was going to get traded, my expectation, my honest evaluation on it would have been 3 firsts, 2 pick swaps, and extra stuff. And here they got Danilo Gallinari's expiring contract, and they got the 3 firsts and 1 pick swap, which you think, okay, those picks and pick swap pretty good. When you get extra stuff, I'm talking solid young players. I was talking about the Knicks perspective. If the Knicks were going to make a deal, I thought, maybe 2 firsts, 2 pick swaps, and you have to give up Emmanuel Quickly and Obi Toppin maybe. And that seems like a pretty fair trade. This is disastrous for San Antonio. Now the one thing I'm going to say here, they've got some good young players. So Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, they're still in good hands. This doesn't mean that they're going to suck. This doesn't mean they're going to be the worst team in 5 years. But I feel like they got a really, low-level asset or a collection of assets out of their best player, out of an all-star guard who averaged 21, 8, and 9 on pretty efficient scoring. It is very difficult to find guards who can do what Dejounte Murray just did this season. It just doesn't come around, especially with his size and his defensive prowess. He's not just an offensive guard, but he's really improved his offense, and he's always been a good defensive player. And now you put that next to Trae Young. This is a no-brainer A for Atlanta. And for San Antonio, again, I think this is a D trade. I just think that they did not maximize the value here. And the biggest issue, like, yes, those picks, you get picks. It gives you flexibility. But the issue is getting Charlotte's next year is whatever. Charlotte's good. Like, it's not going to ultimately mean that much. Mr. Rudy Poo, basically 4 first-round picks for a one-time All-Star. That amount of draft comp would render a current superstar Hawks desperation move here. See, that's where I disagree. Are the Hawks going to be better than San Antonio in 2026? Probably. Then that swap becomes nothing. This is the thing I don't think people really understand. Next year, the Oklahoma City Thunder from the Paul George trade have a swap with the Clippers. A swap. The Thunder are not going to be as good as LA. That swap becomes nothing. The Clippers keep their pick. The Thunder keep their own pick. That swap becomes nada, becomes zero. The only thing it hurts is a team's flexibility up until draft night. But ultimately, when they have their asset, they can go ahead and do whatever they want with it. And that first in 2026, I guarantee you San Antonio is using their own selection, not Atlanta's at that point. I promise you that Atlanta will be better in 2026 than San Antonio simply because of this deal. Popovich is headed toward the final year of his, probably his coaching career. I had to guess. I think Quinn Snyder's going to be the head coach in San Antonio next season. And you traded a 25-year-old who came off the best season of his career, has shown consistent improvement year in, year out. And I'm sorry, Spurs fans, I'm not trying to be harsh on San Antonio is a very well-run franchise, one of the best, teams in terms of, realistically a dynasty during my lifetime. The Spurs are an awesome organization, which is partially why I'm willing to be so hard on them and be so surprised and confused, because we don't see the Spurs do something like this. Usually the Spurs are the team pulling out the Kawhi Leonards or finding the Danny Greens of the world and making all the right moves, and this one to me just isn't. It just isn't. Charlotte's going to be a team around the playoffs next year. Again, that pick likely is going to be pick 10 or worse, which, pick 10 could be valuable, but it's not Dejounte Murray valuable. 2025, 2027, okay? I just want to point out right now that around the league, the Rockets would not have traded John Wall for Russ, and they bought out John Wall. They would not have traded John Wall without getting that 2027 Lakers first. And the Lakers were somewhat hesitant to do it, but also, there were probably calls and discussions about that. That's what a 2027 first gets valued at, is a player who got bought out. Ultimately, do you think that the Hawks here feel really concerned about 2027 right now? The fact that they just added a 25-year-old All-Star? Absolutely crazy. The one thing that San Antonio has now is a little bit of long-term flexibility. Danilo Gallinari's an expiring contract. Maybe, just maybe, San Antonio feels like they can go out and make a move for a bigger player. I do not think the Spurs will go for Beal. I don't think the Spurs are going to be players this free agency. If they felt like they could get Beal, they would have kept Dejounte Murray. What I think they're maybe planning on is going into next season, maybe tanking a little bit here, and then the next year, hopefully that, they show some positive signs. One thing here, Spurs fans, Devin Vassell is going to break out this next season. Devin Vassell is going to have a huge, huge jump. I 100% promise you that. And now let's go ahead and talk about this right here. This comment from Abdominal. If you guys are new to the channel and you're not subscribed, make sure to go do so right now. I'm going to change the chat to subscriber only mode here at some point in the near future. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so that I can keep seeing your comments. But when it comes to Trae and Dejounte Murray, I actually really like that backcourt because there's a few reasons. Dejounte Murray offers a lot of the things that Trae Young doesn't. He's bigger. He's a little bit more athletic. He's a little bit stronger, and not a little bit more athletic. Excuse me. I'm kind of speaking out of turn there with some of these with what I'm saying a little bit. He's a lot more athletic. He's way bigger. He's way faster. And he's just a stronger player in general in terms of the actual physical components of basketball. He's a perfect complement in the way that he's going to defend point guards. He's going to defend twos and threes. The 2025 and 2027 first, by the way, are completely unprotected. So, there's a small risk there. Say Trae Young and Dejounte Murray end up leaving. That's the risk for Atlanta. But ultimately, I don't think that those two players are going to leave, just given the fact that Atlanta's a pretty good market. And now they're going to be good. I don't really see any reason for those two teams to leave. Dejounte Murray's not even an expiring contract this year. He's under contract through 2024. So worst case here, Atlanta gets 2 years of Dejounte. And if things aren't going well, they could trade him again next year for probably at least this package. Craig Davenport here, leaving a little bit of hope for the Spurs fans. Don't worry, you guys are going to win the lottery next year. That's the goal. To be honest, I was pulling for you guys this year. I really wanted the Spurs to move up in this lottery. I thought it would have given them a really interesting dynamic with Dejounte, a team that was almost in the playoffs this past year, and then you give them a top 4 pick. I thought that was going to be really interesting. I don't think this move, I keep seeing comments about who they're going after. I don't think they're going to go after anybody. I think they're going to play it really slow. They're going to make some of their little budget signings like they like to do with the, Doug McDermott's of the world. I wouldn't be surprised if Bryn Forbes ends up coming back. I don't know. And again, this too, we need to be careful. Hawks aren't going to win a championship just because of this move. There's a lot of other stuff that has to go right. I think they'd have to upgrade at certain spots on this roster. But I really think the last week has now gone perfectly for Atlanta. I really do. If you're a Hawks fan, yeah, and San Antonio did get hosed in the Kawhi trade. Actually, this is a good point. This is somewhat reminiscent of that trade in terms of the player that they gave up. Obviously Kawhi was way better than Dejounte, but the fact that they got more for Dejounte than they did for Kawhi, which I guess is at least a good thing. But overall, I think it's a nightmare situation for San Antonio. But at the end of the day, I don't think it necessarily means Atlanta's going to win a championship. I don't, which Hawks fans, I know you guys are going to say, yes, we will. It's really easy to say that. You still have to figure out how you deal with Giannis and Tatum and some of the forwards in the East. But this is where Dejounte also helps Atlanta. He offers way more length, way more size, and he's got a phenomenal wingspan, which I know, you hear that all the time, but this is a really good move for them. You get off of Danilo's terrible contract, and he's really regressed as a player the last 2-3 years. After they got him from LA or from Oklahoma City, I thought, maybe he'll have a pretty nice role on that team. And he's lost a lot of his offensive game. He's just kind of really regressed in a bunch of different ways. I don't think this is a good trade at all for the Spurs. I get what you're saying here. They're not going anywhere with him. He's 25. And I see this all the time in YouTube comments. If you think a 25-year-old doesn't fit your timeline, you're in the wrong business, okay? If you think someone who's in his mid to early 20s isn't going to fit your quote-unquote timeline in terms of age and how well he can play for a team, your timeline is broken and you would get fired as a GM. You do not have a 7-8 year timeline, especially if it's going to take that long to rebuild. You have a 4 to 5 year timeline. Dejounte Murray fits every single timeline in the league right now because he's 25 years old. Heck, a lot of teams right now would give up the bag to go get Beal, who's like 5 years older. Dejounte Murray, really phenomenal player. And to be honest, it just feels like Atlanta robbed him from San Antonio. Atlanta, this is a phenomenal move for them. I keep saying it. I'm not this optimistic about stuff. I really am not. I'm usually somewhat of a pessimist when it comes to moves and their impact. But when you look, see, this is the thing. Yes, your time. There's no reason to just be bad. There's not a reason to just be bad because then you just sit there and pray for lottery balls. If the Thunder didn't move up to number 2 in the lottery this year, the whole year would have been looked at as a disappointment, and the last 3 months of the season were wasteful for Oklahoma City fans to attend or to watch on TV, okay? You don't want to tank. Nobody wants to tank. Tanking is terrible for the league. It's terrible for the small market teams that try and do it, because when you already struggle with attendance, the last thing you want to do is put a whole bunch of G Leaguers on the floor. Now, I'm not saying San Antonio is a team with a bunch of G Leaguers. They've got solid young players, which is why making this move seems a little premature to me. Trading a 25-year-old who just had the best season of his career, and I think can probably repeat some of it, at least most of it, I don't understand. I really don't. He's 25 years old, very skilled, great physical frame. He's a great NBA player right now. He'll be a great NBA player tomorrow, and he'll be a great NBA player 5 years from now. He will be. And the fact that San Antonio was so willing to move off of him surprises me. You know, look at the trade with Derek White to Boston. They traded White to Boston, and he really helped change that team's season. They got to the finals, and they got pick 25. If you go back, would you trade pick 25 for Derek White? The obvious answer is yes, and I'm telling you right now here, the Hawks gave up probably picks like, say, 13, maybe pick 23 in 2025, and the 2027 one might be what, pick 16, pick 15? Okay, the fact that they didn't get AJ Griffin in this deal is a little bit of a concern to me. The fact that they didn't make other moves to get every other team, any other players in this is really surprising. Frenchie says that's bad logic. Drafting an all-star with the 9th pick has the same odds as the 4th, the 10th more than the 6th, 11th and 13th more than 7th, 8th, 30 years of data. Okay, yeah, and how many, this is the question here, Frenchie. I know 100% that Dejounte Murray's an all-star. What's the chance of the 9th overall pick being an all-star? Where's your 30 years of data for that? That's the issue. Yes, I'm the biggest advocate of the draft being deep, the draft having a lot of talent. I say it all year long. In every mock draft that people go in and say stupid stuff saying, oh, it's a 4-player class, it's a 3-player. I don't believe to that. I do not subscribe to that. And anyone who's been watching me knows that. But the honest reality is when you're picking top 3 or 4, most of the time you feel a little bit more confident what kind of player you're getting. And after that, it really comes down to development and progression. And you have to see a lot of improvement from those players because they're not at a stage where they're quite as ready to compete, which makes them a little bit less of a sure thing. That's just the honest reality. Now, I'm not saying that you can't find good players. Giannis Antetokounmpo was picked 15, and you look at, Nikola Jovic was taken during a Taco Bell commercial. Okay? I'm not saying the Spurs here are dead in the water. They've got good young players, and if they hit on these picks, sure, it can save it. But right now, and I scout out to the 2026 draft. I know players who are going to be in the 2026 NBA draft right now, and yes, there's some good ones. But we're waiting 4 years to get there. The 2025 draft is 4 years from now. Like, literally, it's insane how... If this trade happened 1 week ago, it would have been 4 drafts until they got to use that 2025 first. And that 2023 first, okay, you get to use it next year. How bad is Charlotte going to be? Let's say they even get lucky in the lottery and move up to number 4 next year, and they draft Nick Smith Jr. out of Arkansas. Let's say they move up and get Nick Smith Jr. or Derek Whitehead out of Duke. There's no guarantee that either of those players do for you what Dejounte Murray just did. And he's 25 years old. That is the reality here. You don't want to tank. I don't understand teams. Oh boy. This is probably the worst take I've ever seen. Someone clipped this. Holy cow. Ayo Dosunmu is nowhere near the level of Dejounte Murray. That is just ridiculous. My holy king, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here. Bronny and LeBron going to San Antonio. Yeah, I mean, well, with that 2027 first, they'll have a shot at taking Bryce James as well. That's awesome. They'll get LeBron's younger kid because that's how long we're going to wait until they get to use that asset. Oh, man. Yes, Greenvex, it is real. Mr. Papercut says, hey, my man, I really think that they truly believe they want Joshua Primo as their future star at point guard. With DeJounte gone, they can let him flourish. I get it. But the issue is you could have probably given him another year to maybe prove that he's worthy of that. Primo, I think, is going to be good. But this is funny. Some of the things I'm saying or seeing in the comments. Some of these are a little crazy. To be honest with you guys, Atlanta got the best player in this deal. And unless something happens where in 2027, using the Hawks pick, they draft some guy who goes on to be a 3-time All-Star, can we say they won? If they use 2023, 2025, and 2027, and they draft 0 All-Stars with those picks, they draft 0 All-Stars, did they win this deal? I don't think so. Yes, I get that they got drafted. Drew Holiday got traded for the same stuff, and he was older. I'm just going to say, and he got more pick swaps. And guess what? A lot of people really like that return for the Pelicans. The Milwaukee Bucks won a championship. I get that teams want to, position themselves for the draft. Having these assets doesn't even help you move up to number 1. If you want Wembanyama next year, I'm sorry, but a team's not going to say, oh, you have a 2027 first from Atlanta. We'd love to trade you the rights to Wembanyama. They're going to laugh at you on the phone and hang up the phone, okay? They're not going to say, and people say the same thing about Oklahoma City. Oh, they have all these draft assets. They have 15 first-round picks in the next 5. Okay. Let's say next year Oklahoma City lands at 7, and they want to move up to number 1 for Victor Wembanyama. If you offer 10 first-round picks for Victor Wembanyama right now, and by the way, they're the Clippers first and their own first, and they're projecting to get a little bit better, no one's trading Victor. Right, exactly. That's the fact. And this is the issue with getting these picks. It doesn't mean that they turn into something bigger or better. And the one thing here, too, let's look at how many first-round picks don't make it in the league. Let's look at how many that don't. You want to talk about 30 years of data. There's players 30 years from now that got drafted, or 30 years ago that got drafted that none of you have ever heard of because they played less than 3 seasons in the NBA in the first round. And that's just the reality. Now, again, I'm someone who spends a ton of time with the NBA draft. If you've been here, you probably watched quite a bit of my NBA draft content. That's really what I love to talk about the most on the channel. But having all of these draft picks doesn't guarantee you anything, but having Dejounte Murray next to Trae Young guarantees you're a pretty good team. That's what I'm going to say. A lot of teams would have loved to get Dejounte Murray. I'm pretty surprised that this was the price. I thought that they could have gotten more. Even think about Minnesota. If they could have made a deal with Minnesota here and got D'Angelo Russell back in a deal, who, yes, I know people look at his contract and say, oh, that's bad. San Antonio in the last, decade and a half has signed LaMarcus Aldridge. Who else have they signed in free agency? They got Jeremy Sohan. Here's the thing too, and I know people are gonna think that I'm being, really, really harsh on the. I'll keep the trade up on there for you guys. I know people are gonna say that I'm being really harsh on the Spurs. Dejounte averaged nearly a triple-double, and he wasn't even chasing stats. He was just playing. He was just playing games. He plays to win. He helped the Spurs win. He was a big part of what they did. The Spurs did not win this trade. I'm telling you right now, they didn't. That 2023 first-round pick from Charlotte is something that if Charlotte had that, they would be trying to use that to get off of Gordon Hayward. That's what they would be using that pick for. And if they found out they could get Dejounte Murray for that, they'd probably try and do that too. Realistically here, there's a lot of stuff that's going to have to go right for San Antonio for this trade to work out. Now, and again, I'm not trying to hate on San Antonio. First of all, it destroys them right now. They traded. I see this comment a lot too. Mighty Messer, a great subscriber. Glad to have your comment here. Be bad or be good. Do not be mediocre. I completely disagree. It's really easy to say that because it sounds super easy of, we're going to get a top pick, which, by the way, if you're the worst team in the league, you have a 14% chance at picking one. 14%. That's 1 out of 7. Not great odds, right? It's basically the same odds as playing Russian roulette. You don't really feel good about it. So that's kind of the thought there. And in terms of be bad or be good, the Sacramento Kings have been really bad for 2 decades almost. I'm sure that the Kings would kill to have the Indiana Pacers record the last year and a half or 2 years, and to have the Pacers playoff success, which has somewhat been limited because, again, they've been kind of in that mediocre realm. The Kings would kill for that. It's really easy to say that, be bad or be good because you always feel like when you're bad, you're going to become good. I'm a New York Jets fan. We've been bad for over a decade straight. We have not made the playoffs since 2011. It's really not that white and black to say be bad or be good. Every single team at every single moment should be looking to take steps to get better. And this is honest facts. Just because you type in Cavs doesn't make you right. And just because you disagree with me, especially if you're a Spurs fan, take a step back, because I know 4 months ago or 5 months ago, right before the All-Star break, you guys were pushing for this guy to be an All-Star and saying that he's the best Spur on the team and it's not even close. I saw all of that. You guys were saying all of that because the Spurs fans, first of all, you guys are really passionate. And I love that. I love how passionate you guys are about Spurs basketball, and I really respect that. I see a lot of great comments. I know Spurs fans really live for that team, and it's awesome that they play there in San Antonio, and I really do like it. But you can't go from 5 months ago saying that Dejounte Murray is a high-quality all-star player, which I agree with, to now saying that, oh, he's worth a 2023 first, 2025 first, and a 2027 first. The 2027-2028 season will be the rookie year for one of those guys. The rookie year. It's insane. Popovich won't be coaching this team. The GM might not even be in place by the time that player gets drafted. I hope this works out for San Antonio. I do. But right now, my honest grade is a D. And I think Atlanta, what they gave up, yes, there's a risk there. But the risk doesn't seem as big when your star player is 23 years old and average 29 and 10. Okay? The risk isn't actually that grand for Atlanta. The LA Clippers were willing to do this with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who were both much older. Yes, now granted they were both better than Trae Young and Dejounte Murray. But realistically here, 3 firsts and a pick swap, I thought it was going to be more. I thought it was going to be more for Dejounte Murray. And again, this could work out for the San Antonio. And yes, there's players that you can find every single year. I think Jeremy Sohan's good. I think Devin Vassell's going to be really good. I think Vassell's really poised to be a breakout player. And in fact, I would pick him to be my most improved player this next year. Spurs fans, I'm not hating. I think that Dejounte Murray, though, was the best player on this team. And you traded him, and you got really nothing substantial back, at least for the immediate future. Maybe by 2025, we could be looking at something if somehow the Hawks are super injured that year or have another down year. Atlanta's not going to be that bad, though. Dejounte, I think, is a perfect fit next to Trae Young. You offer the size next to elite shooting and playmaking. Dejounte can play make in his own right, gives you a little bit more transition offense, which I think is huge. And another thing that I think is really important here, with the way that they try and hide Trae Young defensively, and that really, I think, hurts them a lot. They actually gave up one of the most, they were one of the worst transition defenses this past year in the NBA. And a big reason why is because they try and hide Trae Young. So a lot of the time they'll have him go on the corner shooter, whether that be like a Royce O'Neal type player, some offensive player who's probably not going to hurt you with the ball in his hands a ton. They try and hide Trae Young, but it creates a lot of difficulty in terms of, matching up across the floor in transition opportunities. And now having a Dejounte Murray type player helps you with that because he can guard ones, he can guard twos, and he can guard threes. Regardless of where he's at on the floor when it comes to transition defense, he can match up with somebody. The fact that they drafted AJ Griffin, who's a really good athlete, nice three-point shooter, fits really well on this team already. And he probably won't even have to play a ton because they still got Herter, they've still got Collins. And the Dejounte is cheap right now. He's making $16.5 million this next season. I have a hard time believing other teams would not have signed up for this contract because having a player at the all-star caliber level does help you a lot when he's not making $20 million. Now, the one thing I want to say here, the one thing I really want to say, Dejounte is not a superstar. I'm hyping this up. The reason why I think the risk is very low here for Atlanta, given the age of this roster, specifically their best players. Trae Young, 23 years old. Dejounte Murray now, 25. You've also got Bogdanovic, who's almost 30, but that's almost 30. Next couple of years, he's going to be good. Kevin Herter's young. DeAndre Hunter's young. And you look at Onyeka Okongwu, who I think is going to be awesome for them in 3-4 years, really awesome for them by then. I think start really having an impact this next season to a greater extent than he did this past year. This team, Atlanta's got depth now. They've got a really good combo in the backcourt, and it gives them other flexibility. The Hawks here, let's think about it from the Hawks perspective. Right now, could you trade Bogdanovic? If they try and trade Bogdanovic, could they get a first rounder back for him? The idea is probably yes. It might have to be a 2025 first, kind of like what we saw from Jeremy Grant. Okay. Think about that now. If they trade Bogdanovic for a 2025 first from a team that, who knows what they'll be in a few years, you feel pretty good about that. And then you're looking at the 2023 and 2027 really being the only assets out the door if you're able to recoup a 2025 first. Yes, this gives San Antonio flexibility. And usually a lot of you that watch the content here know that I'm all about flexibility. Flexibility is awesome. Flexibility is really, really good to have. But when you're making a trade like this, the hope is you go get a young player that has shown something. You get somebody who's shown that he's a capable, competent NBA player. Maybe there's some upside there. When I was talking about the Knicks, I thought, hey, if you can get an Emmanuel Quickley or an Obi Toppin in a deal, that's what would be awesome, right? You'd be able to net some of these players that could really help you not only win long-term, but mitigate some of those growing pains. You don't want to be absolutely abysmal. No one wants to be the worst team in the league, actually. Yes, I know for tanking purposes, that's the idea, right? But if you're the third worst team, you have the same odds as the worst team. And I don't know. San Antonio's not going to be the worst team. And that's the thing people are all sleeping on. Vassell's good. Keldon Johnson's good. Jakob Poeltl's good. I really like Sohan there. This team's not that bad. Primo's going to take a step forward. They're not going to be great. They're not going to be a play-in team anymore. They're not going to be a playoff team either. But this is just, it's surprising to me because I honestly thought they were in the playoff discussion. I really did. If Vassell took the jump like I think he's going to, and, if Dejounte stays at this level, Keldon gets a little bit better, if they stay healthy, Jakob Poeltl plays well, and if Sohan's the missing piece like I think he could be for that team to a certain extent, I thought maybe for Greg Popovich's likely last season coaching the team, they could have made a push forward because I think, honestly, Quinn Snyder is going to be the next head coach there. Now, this is the thing. If they go and make a move for a Victor Wembanyama, if they find a way to land Wembanyama, whether that's through the lottery luck or something crazy happens and they get the first overall pick, then everything looks super great, right? Everything looks super fun, and you're like, oh, we got Wembanyama. And I trust me, I believe Wembanyama is going to be a star. Wembanyama is super special. But there's not a guarantee. At best, if everything goes wrong this year for San Antonio, they lose a bunch of games, and they finish with one of the 3 worst records in the league, then you end up in a situation where you have a 14% chance to get Wembanyama. I'm telling you, you don't trade your best player for a 14% chance. You don't do that. This isn't the state lottery. This is the NBA. And you don't gamble. You don't play with odds. What you do is make smart, long-term decisions. And there's elements to that in this deal. But my honest opinion, the reason why I give it a D is you didn't get a young player back who I think is going to be really good. You didn't get a player back who, I think is going to be at least substantial on your roster. Danilo Gallinari, maybe never even going to play a game for San Antonio. I'd be surprised if he does, honestly. And right now at this point, there's a lot of unknown, I think, for San Antonio. And that's one of the biggest flaws. I don't know. I'm trying to see it from San Antonio's perspective, but I just have a hard time believing that they couldn't have gotten something similar to this with a young player, or at least a younger player attached than a Danilo Gallinari. Again, I understand that this is maybe about flexibility for them as well. And again, I'm very high on flexibility. This isn't a death sentence for San Antonio, even though I keep giving it a really low grade. San Antonio's got good young players. They've got young pieces, and having draft assets is always good. But at the end of the day, for me, I don't think any of those draft assets become Dejounte Murray. And the fact that they're in 2027, 2025, they're so long away that it's tough to not see a way that Atlanta won this deal. I really do believe that. It's just a difficult situation for me to look at San Antonio and deem them a winner here in any way. They gave up a really good player, a top 35 player in the world, probably. I would say top 35. Think about what, realistically, Spurs fans, would you say Dejounte Murray's at least on the same level of a Domantas Sabonis? My honest estimation is probably, right? Sabonis is about the same age as Dejounte, and I think the two of them, with what we've seen most recently, the last couple of years, they're probably on a very similar level. And the fact that they did not get a deal done very similar to the Sabonis deal is a little concerning to me. That's just my honest thought, though. I think that there's some issues there. Just a quick reminder, too, we will be live streaming tomorrow for NBA free agency, so make sure you guys come stop in for that. I'm absolutely excited for how everything's going to play out, but, I think there's better outcomes here. Even if you landed Onyeka Okongwu here for San Antonio, I'd be like, okay, they got a young, substantial player who is a former top 10 pick that I believe in. They didn't get anything like that in this deal. They got a 2023 first from Charlotte, 2025 first from Atlanta, 2027 first. Now, Atlanta loses a lot of flexibility, but they gain a really good 25-year-old player coming off of a near triple-double type season. It's very difficult to, really counteract that and match that. It really is. So, and this is the thing, Manny says, we have plenty of our own youth to develop. We can still trade Jakob for more picks. Yes, but having more good youth is better. If you believe that that you guys wouldn't have wanted Onyeka Okongwu because you have other young players, that's just not the way that you should be operating in the NBA. You should be trying to acquire as many good players as you can at any single moment. Now, I don't think the Spurs are stupid, but I think that this is a surprising move from them. I think that they could have done better, honestly. Here's an interesting question. That's a good point. I think the Hawks probably wouldn't want to give up Onyeka, and that's why I thought the Spurs were going to have to get more than they did, because I thought, why would the Spurs not value Dejounte Murray more than Onyeka Okongwu? He should be valued more than Okongwu. Yes, I know Okongwu's got a lot of potential and upside. Jeffrey, I completely agree. I really like Okongwu. I think he's going to be a really good player. But Dejounte Murray's showing it more. He's obviously a little bit older. And I understand some of the defensive upside there with Okongwu, his ability to switch. He's highly athletic, makes a ton of plays. Dejounte Murray just put up 21, 9, and 8. And it's not just about the numbers. He impacted winning. He was really good. Here, Majib says, I like Murray, but that fit with Young isn't good, in my opinion. It's interesting that you say that. I think it's going to be really good. I like the fit a lot. I think the game is going to be much easier for both of them. Both of them have become accustomed to being the best player with the ball in their hands. Dejounte Murray mostly this season. Trae Young last couple seasons has really shown that in Atlanta. And I think that this season is going to feel really easy for both of them. Both of them are going to be dual threats offensively. And it's going to be really tough to find teams that can match up really well with both of them. Now, I still think that Boston and Milwaukee are better teams than what Atlanta currently situates themselves as. But Dylan asked a really great question here about Rudy Gobert. Do I think the Hawks still try to pursue a Gobert trade packaged around John Collins? From everything I get, Rudy Gobert is staying in Utah. Now, I didn't expect this Dejounte Murray trade to come around as quick as it did. So could I be wrong? I definitely could be. But Atlanta, with Gobert's contract, that's a little bit of a trickier situation, especially now that they can't attach first, really, which is one of the few downsides in this deal, is that they lose some of the flexibility to make other moves, which is why, again, if you're trading first, you have to be careful about it. but this isn't trading first for a 30-year-old. This is trading first for a 25-year-old, which is a little bit different. It makes you feel a little bit better about it since he's under contract for 2 years, and they're cheap in terms of his production in comparison to his contract at about $16 million this year and $17 million next year. You feel pretty good about that. Talking about Gallinari here, is he going to be cut? I would guess a buyout. Probably going to shave off $2-3 million of his contract and let him go sign elsewhere for that. Do I think the Pistons are a playoff team? Davion wants to know. Not a playoff team this year, but I think they're going to start pushing in that direction. I really loved Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. Those were 2 top 5 players on my board for the draft. Cap room, they have some cap, so they can maybe go make some moves, but they also just took in Nerlens Noel and Alec Burks, who I don't think move the needle that much, but it does help that team. I think they're going to be maybe in that play-in discussion. But in the East, it's tough, right? You have to deal with a whole bunch of really good teams. You got Philly, you got Boston, you've got Milwaukee. I think Brooklyn with Kyrie and Kevin Durant likely staying there. They're going to always be in that discussion. Atlanta's going to be in there. There's a bunch of teams. I only named 5 just there off the top of my head, but you get the picture. It's tough to get into the Eastern Conference playoffs. I think the Pacers are going to be a little bit more competitive next season. We'll see. I think the Pistons, though, are the team that's probably knocking on the door there in the East. Let's keep going through here to some of the comments. Steven, not a fan of the channel. That's all right, Steven. Keep tuning in, though. Appreciate it. Oh, man. Some of this stuff is funny to read. Blue Diamond Gem says this might sign a complete rebuild for San Antonio. Definitely could. And, that's the thing. A complete rebuild, in theory, sounds good, right? Because it sounds, we're going to, destroy what we are. We're not good enough right now. And then we're going to build to being better. There's never that actual guarantee of building to be better. And that's the one issue. People love to romanticize rebuilds. Sometimes rebuilds stay rebuilding for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And, look at a team like Golden State. I feel like a lot of people probably would have thought Golden State's era is over. Maybe they should look to trade Curry and, move off some of those contracts and get to a point where they can, really build around Kuminga and Wiseman and Moody. They just won an NBA championship. And they've got youth. That's the MO there. You can be good and young at the same time sometimes. And those two players, and you don't even necessarily have to have good current young players to do so. The Spurs right now do have good current young players, which, had they made a buy move even, which I know sounds crazy, but if they went on and made a move for a scorer off the wing, this team could have made a push in the West a little bit. Now, I'm not saying they would have won a championship or even made the Western Conference Finals. Heck, they might have just been a first-round exit. Being a first-round exit is better than winning 25 games. It is, especially when there's no actual guarantee. Crawford here says, DeJounte's a ball hog. Less shots for Young. Mid-range game will be a negative for Atlanta. No, it won't be. Atlanta needs what Dejounte Murray gives them. He's a definitely really good fit. And, honestly, you can claim he's a ball hog in San Antonio. What was he supposed to do this past year? He was clearly the best player on the team. It wasn't even close. He's not a ball hog. Okay, he will fit better. Frenchie here says, best tweet ever. I'm now a Hawks fan. Sort of. That's awesome. Love to hear that. That's a funny tweet coming from a Spurs fan there. Obviously, this is a good time to plug our Twitter. Go give us a follow on Twitter. I will be shouting out everyone who gives us a follow. Link is in the description for that. Again, go give us a follow on there, and I will shout you out live on stream here right now in front of over 500 people. If you want a shout out, now is the time. Go give us a follow on the Twitter I am watching for right now. Jordan wants to know, are the Hawks done making moves? Jordan, thank you for all your comments, by the way. Really do appreciate it. I am going to be turning the live now into subscribers only commenting, but don't worry. If you guys subscribe right now, this very second, you can go ahead and you will be able to comment right away. If you hit that subscribe button right now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you'll still be able to comment. So go ahead and do so right now. And if you don't feel like subscribing, don't feel bad about just sticking around, maybe listening to me answering some of the questions. But I don't think the Hawks are completely done, but I think this signals that they're, kind of intent on their roster and they're kind of decision-making with what they're looking for. It's also the Spurs' 50th anniversary this season, which is crazy to think that it's that long. Maybe LeBron 2023, does he go to San Antonio? That would be awesome. Here, Derb says, I love Murray. Don't ever say his Spurs fans don't love him. It's just a dumb trade for our team. Well, exactly. And I know how much you guys love him. I heard all of the, the stuff coming out of San Antonio around the All-Star game, pushing for him. He obviously got in as an injury replacement. And I love that. I really, really like that. But then it's funny when they turn around and they're kind of, giving the cold shoulder to Dejounte and saying that this was a really good trade for them. I get that they got draft picks, but they gave up a really good young player. So it's funny here. Whole city of San Antonio rooting for Atlanta next year. I agree with that. I think they're going to want to see Dejounte do well. I want to see Dejounte do well. And it's funny. I want to see Trae Young do well. For people who've been watching the channel, you know exactly what I'm referencing there. Colin says, Spurs starters as of now, Trey Jones at the point guard, who shot like 18% from three this past year. Primo, Vassell, probably Keldon Johnson there, or Jeremy Sohan. You could probably go Primo at the point, Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Sohan, Pirtle. They're going to win more than 10 games. They're going to win like 25 to 30. They're going to win more games than people are thinking. Elvin says, Hawks have plenty of three-point shooters. Y'all need some. Yeah, they've got a few that they could look to trade. Whenever DJ was passing the ball, it just came back to him. Yeah, but almost 9 times a game, it was going in the hoop off of assists as well, which is pretty valuable to me. And I think, if he's passing the ball to Trae Young, the ball is probably not going to come back to him. It's probably going to go in the hoop as well. Spurs still not getting Vic. I agree, Pew. I completely agree. Shout out to, here we have a mention actually from Booze Radley. Shout out to Booze Radley. Go give him a look on Twitter. He tweets at us, says, San Antonio going to waive Gallinari or keep him. Seems like they either go big in free agency or are tanking for Wembanyama. I think, let me respond here on stream. I think the Spurs buy out Gallo. That's ultimately what I think. I do not think the Spurs... Gallo is not a trade piece. Crawford. Gallo is not a trade piece. Not at all. Gallinari just had the worst year of his career. He's not going to get traded. He averaged 12 points a game on 43% from the field. The last 2 years have actually been somewhat rough for him. There's been noticeable regression from where he was with the LA Clippers back in 2018. And even with where he was with the Oklahoma City Thunder for that year, there's been definite noticeable regression. STG Rico, welcome to the stream, says Spurs should trade for Brogdon now or Miles Turner. See, that makes some sense to me if they make a move for like Brogdon and they try and stay around that level where they were and add these assets. But Brogdon's contract isn't great. And, I'm not sure. I don't know. Gremlin, I know a lot of Spurs fans love Trey Jones, and I get it. He plays a lot like his brother, Tyus, but he's not as good of a shooter. I think that part is clearly evident. Where he's like that fundamental traditional point guard, but when it comes to playoff basketball, you're not going to ever win with a Trey Jones being a starter. That's part of why Denver was fine moving off of Monte Morris after seeing him start for a year, basically, and being a bigger part of that team with Jamal Murray out. That's part of why Washington was fine with getting rid of him. I think Trey Jones can be good. I just think it's going to be as a backup role himself long term. Let's see what Cooper here is saying. I could see John Collins and Herter being traded to the Kings now. That would be interesting. I don't know what you think the Kings would be given back, though, which I think is a pretty important aspect here. I ultimately don't think the 2 players get traded. Brady, welcome to the stream, says, did the Wolves trade D'Lo yet? No D'Lo trade, unfortunately. I think getting Dejounte would have been really good for them if this was the asking price. But unfortunately, at this point, there has not been anything. If you do go give us a follow, I'll shout you out. Again, Booze Radley, thank you. DJ Therapy, thank you for the follow on Twitter. Go give us a follow over there. Also, subscribe to the channel. And this is a really good question here from Braden. Time about free agency. Just a reminder, We will be live all day tomorrow for NBA free agency. So if you like what you're seeing right now, again, this was a really impromptu live stream. I wasn't quite prepped for this as much because Dejounte just decided that all of a sudden he was going to get traded within 15 minutes of the news break, and I recorded a video on potentially him getting traded. Got done recording, posted it, and then all of a sudden I had to start a live stream about him getting traded, which was crazy. Was not expecting that, but tomorrow's stream is going to be a little bit more planned, a little bit more thorough, with kind of my complete thoughts about all 198 free agents. We do have a video up on the channel as well covering all 198 free agents. But now to Braden's comment here. Do you think it would be a mistake for the Mavericks to not re-sign Jalen Brunson? No, I don't think so, especially at the price point. If it's going to cost $25-30 million for Jalen Brunson, it hurts because you drafted him in the second round. You've been there, watched this kid get way better, which he has. He really, emerged under Jason Kidd this past year in the starting lineup, where Rick Carlisle seemed a little bit more hesitant to do so next to Luka Doncic. And I think that Brunson can do a lot more. I think he's going to play really well with New York. I think the Knicks are going to get a really good point guard here. But given where Dallas is at, I would rather have them try and work out a sign and trade here with the Knicks. You don't even get a player back. You even send them a second round pick or something just to actually facilitate a sign and trade. It gives the Knicks more flexibility if they want to go out and make some other signings. And also gives the Mavericks flexibility by getting a big trade exception back in a deal. I think that would be really valuable for both sides. And getting a big trade exception, you could fit someone conveniently like a Miles Turner into that. And that's what I want to see the Mavericks do. I want to see the Mavericks go from being really small and unathletic to big and athletic. If you can have Christian Wood and Miles Turner as your starting front court with Kleba and Powell off the bench, Luka at the 1, and you have Dorian and Reggie Bullock starting at the 2 and 3, you'll feel really good. I think your defense is better. You've got way more size. You got rim protection now with Miles Turner. That's what I think would go really well for Dallas. But of course, you have to make some moves to get that done. So it's definitely a little bit of a difficult situation there. I'm sad to see him go. As a Mavs fan myself, I'm sad to see him walking out the door, but definitely a bummer. Nathan says, I'm a Pistons fan, and I've been telling people all week that Miles isn't what we want for the future of Detroit. He maybe isn't, but it's possible. Ryan, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here, Ryan. Beal to Boston. I don't think so. I think Beal stays in Washington, at least for the time being. Probably gets traded within the next 24 months. And then Clint Capella to the Wolves. I don't think so after they drafted Walker Kessler. Okay, well, we'll talk about that in 1 second. Mark Stein reported something else. But I don't think Clint Capella is going to head to the Wolves. I think he's going to stay probably in Atlanta now, but you never know. There's always things that can shake something up. Mark Stein here tweets, by the way, Mavs owner Mark Cuban is scheduled to be joined by top executives Nico Harrison, Michael Finley, and coach Jason Kidd, as Chris Haynes reports, and maybe one or two of the Mavericks players to visit with Jalen Brunson in New York City. So they are not stopping their pursuit of Brunson. Now, there's some serious ramifications for signing him to a 4-year, $120 million deal, like they might have to keep him. But we'll see. Maybe they do it. Mary Ortiz says, I think the JB situation is just a setback for us, man. Yeah, I agree. We're not getting better by losing him. But at the same time, locking yourself into that with Brunson, I'm not sure if the Mavericks are in a great position with that either, if you know what I mean. Cruz says, oh, that makes a little more sense, but still isn't great. Yeah, right, it's not. You don't want to lose a player like Jalen Brunson for nothing, but it's tough. It's definitely tough. As for Bridges in Detroit, no Bridges in Detroit except the ambassador to Windsor. That's a funny comment there from Mighty Messer. Bridges to Detroit, I think, is a good fit. I think he would help their roster win. I understand, though, because the idea is if you have to give him a max, kind of the same way I feel about Brunson to stay in Dallas. An overpay hurts, doesn't feel as great. Chapo's here says, Hawks fan here, what are some nicknames for Murray? I'm going to need him. It seems like a lot of people call him DJ, which I didn't necessarily know as much about Spurs fans, that they've been calling him DJ lately for Dejounte. So there's one for you. That's pretty much. I don't know. I don't have Any Murray nicknames? If you guys have some, throw them in the chat right now. Here, Dan says, do you think the Sixers will trade Harden and Matisse because they're both free agents? No, I don't think so. I think that the Sixers are going to keep both of those guys. If they do trade one of them, it'll be Matisse Thybulle, but James Harden is not going anywhere. As for Clint Capella, I don't think Clint Capella is getting traded either. I think if he were to have been traded, it would have been draft night. But you never really know with this league. Stuff always goes crazy. Chris, we were talking about Miles. Mikal Bridges probably not for sale from the Phoenix Suns. Bella says calling Dejounte D Magic. Not sure if that's a stripper name or an NBA player name, but I guess that's what they're calling him there. Jake the Priest says, will Malcolm Brogdon get traded? And if so, what team do you think a possible trade package? Sacramento makes sense. Probably a future first. Maybe Rashawn Holmes thrown in there. And then for, another team, I mean, maybe Dallas if they panic a little bit about the Brunson situation. They give up, a future first or something. Brogdon getting traded, I think he will. It's just a matter of where now that Washington got their point guard Monte Morris. I feel like they're going to feel pretty good about him. RPR Lucid says, Bucks fan here, do you think there's anything, and I mean anything, we will do this offseason? That's a great question. I actually have a small capacity with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I was, watching the Marjan Beauchamp introduction the other day. And it's pretty interesting thing about Milwaukee. They're probably not going to make any moves simply because they probably feel, hey, if we didn't lose Chris Middleton, we were the best team in the East, and we'd probably beat the Warriors. That's what they're telling themselves, right? If they do make a move, though, it would be for a backup big. I think that they need to go find somebody. I would like a Miles Turner trade to the Bucks. I think that's one of the best spots. But you never really know. So we'll see. Mighty Messer says, what do you think of Noel Burks in a second rounder to take them on? Very team-friendly contracts, IMO. They're not super team-friendly. Last offseason, I told Knicks fans that Nerlens Noel would not finish that contract in New York, and they all got mad at me. But, of course, we're now at a spot where Nerlens Noel is not on that team anymore. I knew that they were going to try and get off that money the moment they signed him. I also said the Evan Fournier contract was bad, and I thought they slightly overpaid for Derrick Rose. And Knicks fans told me I didn't know what I was talking about, and then the Knicks regressed back to the mean and missed the play-in all entirely. So, what do I know, though? But, I think for Detroit, it's a good move. Taking in those players to add a few low-level draft assets, it feels like a no-brainer because they can help them. They can, coach up some of the young guys. I think Noel's going to be valuable for Duren. I think Burks can help Ivy a little bit. They play differently, which is, I think, a valuable thing. You don't necessarily want to have the same player in terms of archetype trying to mentor another. You want to have a player who is skilled in some areas trying to mentor a player who needs to improve in those areas. Ryan says, who's got the better young core, Detroit or Houston? I love Ty and Jalen Green, but I'm going with Detroit. I am too. When I look at Detroit, I had Cade over Jalen Green. Now, Rockets fans don't get mad at me, but I just think Cade Cunningham at his size is a really special player. And I would have Ivy over Ty Washington all day. I think everyone would. And I would, in fact, have Ivy way above Kevin Porter Jr. I think Ivy would be the third best player on those two teams. So I think, with Jalen Green probably being the second. So I think that Detroit currently has the better young core. But, there's things that can change. Houston is really good as well. Jabari Smith, I think, a really good player. He'd probably be the fourth best player between those two teams in a couple of years. And he's a really good role player. So that'll be fun to watch. Chris says, Houston and Detroit developing a low-key rivalry. A little bit, yeah. They're trying to out-tank each other. It's a little weird, but that's their form of rivalry there between those two teams. Chance99 says, where do you think Mo Bamba could land? Seems like a good player to take a chance on. Yeah, Bamba's a pretty good player to take a little bit of a risk on. He's, very talented, can shoot the three ball a bit. has really improved as a rebounder. That's where he took a big step forward this past, 12 months or so. One second here. Sorry. Someone is giving me some information on what's going on with Dallas. But I just had to see what's going on with that. But for Bamba, I think that, I think Detroit would like to take a risk on him. I think that would be a pretty good get for them. I think a team like Oklahoma City, if you can take a stab on a player, you should. Sacramento could use him. He might actually be valuable for them this year in terms of winning. Josh says, tell him to forget Murray's nickname. Call the San Antonio Spurs the San Antonio Basketball Academy, since all we do is develop all-stars to play elsewhere. That's a really funny comment. I like that. You're kind of taking the Tampa Bay Rays approach. For anyone who watches MLB baseball, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But absolutely crazy. Bamba to Houston, definitely could get that done as well. Norin Rad says, come on, only 163 likes. You guys know what to do. Go smash that like button, all of you in here right now. I'm going to see what the stream's at. My goal is at least 200 likes here the next time I check. So go ahead right now. Go give a little look and hit that like button. Thanks, Norin, for that. Definitely a great comment there. Arthur says, I think Weaver wants to keep building in the draft for a couple more years. Max free agents don't help that. You're right, they don't, but they do help you win, which is the ultimate goal, I would guess, for almost every NBA franchise. Can't say it is the actual goal for everyone, but it seems like the goal for most. Jake says, do you think the Pacers will go either after Ayton, Bridges, or Collins? Also, what do you think about the Pacers' future and what they should do? I really like Ben Mathurin. I think Ben Mathurin was a really great selection. I think he's going to get really coached up well by Rick Carlisle. Mathurin's the type of player that Carlisle is going to have success with. Kevin Knox does not get tendered a qualifying offer, so he will be an unrestricted free agent. But ultimately, I think that if they're going to pursue someone, Miles Bridges is the player that makes sense based on their current roster. But say they trade Miles Turner and feel like they can sign Ayton, that's not bad either. Mighty Messer says Noel is under $10 million with team option for 2023-2024. Burke's about the same, $10 million with team option. Can expire them for cap space, trade them for assets, or keep them for $10 million another year. Right, and for Detroit, that's why it makes sense. And I knew the New York Knicks would not be as patient as they always say they're going to be. And honestly, sorry, my source was just not right about what I was getting information from. But with the $10 million there, it's a cheap deal. And I think for Detroit, it was kind of a no-brainer. The fact that they were able to get that kind of stuff. Max here says Cavs should trade for Murray. Yeah, I think so as well. At that price point, I would have definitely signed up for it. Texas says, will Bamba go to the Mavs? Probably not. I would like it. It'd be fun. Terry, who has been watching a ton of the content here, thanks so much, Terry, for all the love and support, says, do you think Buddy Hield gets traded? I think that they're going to try and trade him. Team to watch, maybe Philadelphia, if they're looking to add some more shooting back. Otherwise, you could, look at a few different teams that I think could add another shooter. I think Dallas could use Buddy Hield at a cheap price point. Otherwise, I think, look around the league. Minnesota, the Timberwolves could use him. I know his contract's not the most pretty thing to look at in the league, but good players can help you win games, and Buddy Hield's a pretty solid player. RPR Lucid says, how high are you on Jonathan Isaac after all the injuries? I'm high on Jonathan Isaac as a player in general. Now the issue is we haven't seen him play for 2 years. If I knew what I was getting in him, I would trade a first for him, at least maybe even 2 firsts. I would be really in on Jonathan Isaac. If I had a first to play with or 2, I would definitely dangle them out in front of Orlando and say, yes, please give me a 6'10" forward who can defend 1 through 4, sometimes even the 5 occasionally, and disrupt them. He's a great defensive playmaker, gets in the passing lane. This was a guy who was going to be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year had he not gotten injured all the time. And that's really what the issue is for that is you're looking at a situation where he is injured a lot. So if you're going to trade for him, you don't want to trade 2 firsts. And, so that's the thing. But I think Isaac's a good player. I think Isaac's one of the more underrated players in the league because he played in Orlando. Zach Terry says, unbiased Rockets fan, but Jalen Green is the best player since Michael Jordan. That's how Rockets fans talk. So, Zach, I'm glad you're getting the spirit in there with some Houston. Just kidding. Rockets fans, it's a joke. It's a joke. Okay. I feel like, I'm trying to be sarcastic, but, sometimes maybe I don't have the best voice inflection. I have to tell people I'm joking. So, is Weaver a better GM than Presti? Maybe we'll have a video on the channel of that. Anthony, welcome to the stream. He always asks some great questions on Twitter. So, Anthony, really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for all of that. And also, if you guys are not doing so already, go give us a follow on Twitter. I will be shouting out everyone who follows us. Again, Booze, I know you asked another question. I will respond to that after the stream. Marcus Messiah says, can't believe Patty Mills would leave his buddy Ben Simmons. Nets are a disaster. They definitely seem like they could be a disaster. Max says, what do you think the Cavs will do? Cavs are going to try and keep Sexton, and they're going to run that team back. That's my guess. TJ Warren to the Cavs would be a pretty good get for them. I also did like Baji going there. I would have preferred that they took AJ Griffin, which is another great move from Atlanta. So, Hawks fans, if you're still in here, I feel like you're in a really good spot right now. Here's a question. Do I think John Collins for Miles Bridges would work for the Hawks? Yeah, it would work for Atlanta. Wouldn't work for Charlotte, though. They're not going to do that. Mike Max says, do you think the Grizzlies will do anything in free agency with Tyus potentially leaving or at center when they essentially refuse to play Steven Adams in playoffs? No, not yet. I don't think they do anything really substantial in free agency other than try and keep maybe one of Tyus or Kyle Anderson. That's going to be their goal, but we'll see if they can actually get it done. Based on their draft decisions, the fact that they moved up for LaRavia, drafted David Roddy, and also made a few moves in the second round, I don't think that they're going to I don't think that the Grizzlies, are going to try and bring back Kyle Anderson or any forwards in general. Chris says, I'm so dumb for weeks. I thought the Pistons were after Mikal Bridges. No, I wish. I mean, any team that could get their hands on Mikal Bridges right now definitely should. Alex says, looks like Brunson is talking to the Mavs, Knicks, and Heat. Heat getting in there is definitely interesting. He would be a really good addition for Miami. Ryan says, do you think Clippers are a real threat, or are they injury prone, or two of them having not played basketball for 2 years going to affect them? No, I think the Clippers are not only a real threat, I think the Clippers have the best roster in the league. I think top to bottom, Clippers are probably the best team in terms of talent. Now, will it all connect? Maybe not. They've had the least amount of luck in the entire league. Think about the bubble, kind of blowing up that entire season. Paul George shoots the ball at his side of the backboard. Denver storms back 3-1. Unlucky. If that series is going on somewhere else with flight in between and see your family members, I feel like it goes a different way. And then they, are playing the Jazz. Kawhi Leonard tears his ACL toward the end of a game. They go on to beat the Jazz. They probably would have beat the Suns if they had Kawhi, and I think they would have beat the Bucks if they had Kawhi. That's how good of a team they were. People didn't understand how good they were. I think the Clippers were going to win the finals that year, and they didn't, obviously. And injuries are a part of the game. You can't say, oh, what could have, should have been. It happens. A lot of teams get injured, but they've been unlucky. And I think that, yes, they are a little injury prone. That's what happens when you trade for a guy who blew out his knee in PG, and you also have that with Kawhi, who has, suffered a ton of injuries in the past. But realistically, I think that the Clippers, top to bottom, are the best team. I think the Warriors are going to give them a run for their money, though. Mason says tomorrow's going to be a long day. Yes, it is, because we will be live all day long here at Utility Sports with NBA free agency. So, again, if you're liking the content right now, go give us a follow on Twitter. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications as well here on YouTube so you never miss an upload or a post or our live streams. We do post a video every single day, most days. Sometimes, every once in a while we don't get one out, but usually it's at least 30 videos a month, which adds out to about one a day. So Chris here says, I feel like the Clippers are a cursed team who won't ever win. Definitely possible. It's really possible they don't. Athens says, who has had the most impactful offseason so far? Long term, I think that you'd have to say the most impactful is Detroit, getting Ivy and also getting Jalen Duren. I think that the long-term impact is there for Detroit, but I think the short, and also getting Burks and Noel, I think they've had just a really good offseason already. But then you look at a team like Atlanta today, who made the big move for Dejounte. even if it's not super impactful in a way that, they're going to win a championship, that this trade shakes up the league because, one, it sets a price point for young all-stars at 3 firsts. I think it kind of actually lessens the value of star players a little bit based on what we had seen with the Harden deal. And I think how that aged for Brooklyn has kind of slowed down willingness to make big trades. So ultimately, that's kind of what, we're looking at. This is a funny one. Gerald Perry says Troy Weaver trading hot Cheetos for Knicks players and $6 million of cash. Don't forget, the Knicks and Leon Rose there are handing out $6 million of cash to Troy Weaver as well for that move. I'm sure the owner there in Detroit's really happy about that. X Bleak says, nah, but he doesn't want a minimum cut. He wants over minimum. Well, Buddy's going to get traded. He's not going to sign for the minimum. So he won't get cut. He's under contract. So we're not really talking about Buddy's contract. I'm sure that Buddy, if he got cut, would want the mid-level, but he's on a contract. So Jake the Priest says, would it be smart for the Pacers to trade for Jonathan Isaac because they're desperate for 3s and 4s? Also, I think he would be incredible next to Halliburton. He would be a really good player next to Halliburton. I just don't know if the Pacers are in a situation where they want to be handing out picks for players quite yet at this point. Delta says, do you think a trade that sends Ayton to Atlanta is possible or realistic? Maybe. And if there's a Clint Capella trade, this is what it's going to be around. It's going to be Capella and maybe like a Herder to Phoenix for Ayton. That's what I think is possible. It says, do you think Warriors will get everyone back? Not everyone. I think if anyone leaves, the most likely would be Gary Payton II to the Dallas Mavericks. I think that seems rather possible at this point. Chris says, do you think the Cavs make a move for a wing player? No, I don't, because they got Ochai Agbaji in the draft, who's an NBA-ready wing. So I think that they're going to say, we like Okoro. We still think Okoro can have a role in this team. We're getting Sexton back healthy. We drafted Ochai. We're good. Maybe they go and take the risk on a TJ Warren, which there's not really a risk there. You 1 year, $10.2 million. Not really a risk. Use the mid-level exception on him. That could be pretty good. I would really like for Cleveland to get Jay Crowder. I think, I know Cavs fans are going to say, no, not Jay Crowder again. Thinking back to the time when they had LeBron and Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder. But I think he could add a little bit of physical toughness off the bench. Yes, I know they have Wade and they've got Markkanen and they've got, Kevin Love. They've got all this collection of forwards. Having another one wouldn't hurt. And I think, ultimately, if you want to play him at the 3, you can go ahead and knock yourself out with it and see how it goes. It'll be fun. Nola versus the World says, do you think the Pelicans are going to make any trades? Maybe a Devontae Graham one, but I'd be surprised. Armando says, should the Pistons trade Bagley? He seems expendable now. No, they're going to keep him, and they're going to try and hold on to him for at least a 3-year deal. J Money says, Spurs got 3 2025 picks again. It's a rebuild, 3 first-round picks for DJ. Come on, Hawks. Are you cheering for the Hawks there, J Money? It's a little hard to tell what you're exactly saying, but yes, they've got picks. We'll see what they do with them, though. Chris says, what's scary is the Warriors still have Kuminga and Wiseman waiting to be unleashed, and Moses Moody. Don't forget about Moody there as well. The one thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if Wiseman gets traded before the end of his rookie deal. You heard it here first, though, at Utility Sports, by the way. You haven't heard that reporting anywhere else, but I'm telling you right now, under the radar, keep it on the DL. I wouldn't be surprised if James Wiseman gets traded before the end of his rookie contract. LJ Maverick says, kind of down about the JB news going around. We messed up the situation during the trade deadline. We could have had him on the cheap, but I don't believe anything north of $25 million is worth it. I completely agree. We did mess up the situation. I would have loved to get him on that 4-year, $55 million extension like he wanted, but realistically, you're at a catch-22 because let's say Beal became available and you have a trade of Brunson plus something to get him, Brunson, Porzingis picks, you're like, yeah, we'll take Bradley Beal. So they kept their flexibility open, and sometimes that's the issue with flexibility. It doesn't play out the way you think it will, and it sometimes can even come back to haunt you. Texas Sports says, not worth that. For sure, he got hot. He'll cool off. For Dejounte, I think that, this is a little bit cheaper than I thought he was going to go for, honestly. Mighty says, Warriors can get better with Wiseman playing and Kuminga in the playoff rotation. Kuminga is already the real deal. Wiseman can become it too. And I don't take what I said about Wiseman and make it think, don't make it seem like I don't believe in Wiseman. I like Wiseman. I think the Warriors, though, are maybe a little cautious about his fit on that roster. If they really were ready and felt like he was their guy, they wouldn't want to keep Kevon Looney this offseason. Ultimately, going into his third year in the league since getting drafted, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play 20 minutes a game. Josh says, do you think with all the Brunson to New York rumors that Dallas makes a strong push for Beal since Beal declined his offer? No, Beal's going to re-sign in Washington for sure. And they're going to keep him around and he's going to sign an extension. And then ultimately at some point he'll get traded. My Clippers going to make a finals run watch. That's who I would bet on. If I had to bet, I would bet LA. I tweeted about it yesterday, actually, so go follow us on Twitter. Josh says, sure, Clippers can sign Bamba for a vet minimum. They could. If Bamba signs it, they could do that. I think Bamba's going to be looking for something in the neighborhood of 3 years, 40, though. So we'll see. Brunson's leaving even though Dallas can and are willing to pay him the most. The issue is Dallas is going to pay him the most total money. They're not going to pay him the most annual money. Even if they give him 5 years, 110, that's 22, or 5 years. Let's say even 5 years, 125. That's $125 million. And you might say, well, why would he take the next 110? Because he's going to get 110 over 4 years instead of 125 over 5. He gets more money right away. Grom says, hit the sub button, boys. Best basketball content on YouTube. Thank you so much, Grom. I know you've been watching for a while, so thank you so much for that. Everyone hit that subscribe button. Listen to what Grom is telling you. He told you, not me. And I do have to block some people from commenting on the channel here because we get these random bots in the comment section. I can't even go on Instagram anymore because you see all these sponsored ads and, just the worst. Texas Sports says Wall, PG, Kawhi have 6 knees combined, and it seems like all of them have been surgically repaired at least twice, almost, right? It seems Kawhi's had multiple knee injuries. PG obviously had that disastrous USA one. I have I'm gonna tease a little bit. We might have a Paul George Pacers video coming out on the channel soon. And by soon I mean within the next month. Nothing like this week or tomorrow. But within the next month, hopefully, I'm kind of hoping to take a look at Paul George, his career a little bit. So if you guys think that could be a fun video, stay tuned. There's a lot of plans for upgrading the content here at Utility Sports a little bit more too, in terms of our edits and some of the stuff we're pushing out. I feel like the analysis is always at a high level. I think that there's certain areas we're going to try to improve though. So hopefully you guys do stay tuned for that. Jake the Priest says, what are your thoughts on Tyrese Halliburton, future All-Star, Hall of Famer? I could see him being maybe a 1 or 2 time All-Star, which I know sounds a little pessimistic, but remember, the East is really good. There's a lot of great guards in the league. Being a 1 or 2 time All-Star is a hard thing to do. So, definitely good. Mighty Messer says, Dallas looks like the Big West loser this year, taking steps backward, basically screwed by Brunson and insider trade from the Knicks. I think that there's obviously a little bit of weird tampering going on since the Knicks hired his dad, his dad's a good NBA assistant coach. So I don't want to make a bigger deal about it than it really is. And the Knicks can do whatever they want. Tampering is not even really a thing in the NBA. I know that there's rules. No one listens to them. Okay. And when you break them, the NBA says, yeah, we'll take your 2nd round pick. And that's it. And it's a slap on the wrist. It doesn't even matter. And I'm a Mavericks fan, so you can tell I'm unbothered by this, even because it's just the reality. It happens all the time. I don't think they're going to take a step backwards, though. I know, maybe they don't make the Western Conference Finals again, and that seems like a step backwards. They were really close to not making the Western Conference Finals. I think Christian Wood was a really good addition, and I think this team has some flexibility to stay really good long-term. Chance here wants to know, what player would you compare a healthy James Wiseman to? That's a good question. The issue with that is you need some freak athlete who's like 7'1" and can jump out of the gym, but doesn't really think the game of basketball. And there's not a lot of guys that come to mind, but he's good. He's just flat out good. I mean, any team that runs heavy pick and roll, which the Warriors don't, would be a great fit for him, which means 29 teams in the league could use him. Norin says, let's get 200 likes at least. There's still over 350 of us watching. Let's go ahead and check real quick. Let me see how many likes we are at on the stream right now. I'm going to go ahead and check. Norin, thanks for being the big hype man here. We're at 194, guys. We need 6 more likes. Go ahead. smash that like button right now. We will be live here on the channel for about 5 more minutes or so. Let's go ahead and see what Anthony's here asking. With the inconsistency in the front office and sack, do you think eventually a guy like De'Aaron Fox demands a trade? And where do you think he goes if he asks for a trade this offseason? I don't know if there's a clear landing spot for him yet, but I think that it wouldn't even be out of the realm of possibility that they trade him without him demanding one. I'm going to leave it at that. Mighty Messer says, I compare Wiseman to Looney. Way faster, way more explosive, way better defense. Think Looney stays, but Wiseman should take over when healthy. They should be much better when it happens. That's where I think it won't happen. I disagree with that. Not that this is a wrong... And I think realistically, when you watch the two players, I think Wiseman's a better individual talent. But the Warriors system is so different from, any other system really in the league. And I think it's a little too fast for Wiseman. I think if this was any other team, this would be completely true. But I think that Looney probably plays more minutes again next season than Wiseman, which sounds crazy. It sounds a little ridiculous, but that's what I believe. And, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we get to see more Wiseman, but we'll see. Here, Blick wants to know, do you think the Spurs are tanking for Wembanyama? No, I don't think so. I think they're just trying to make a move that they felt was good. Where's John Collins going? Who are the Hawks getting? He's not going anywhere, I don't think. I think he's staying in Atlanta. I think ultimately if he was getting traded, he would have been included in this deal. Then we look at Jake Dupree's, Miles Turner for Wiseman. Is it realistic? And if so, who declines, Pacers or Warriors? Well, it's not realistic because of the money. They would need to work some other stuff in there, which is where it gets complicated, Jake. But it's a good question. I understand what you're going for. But, ultimately that's kind of the thing. And this is what I was saying, Anthony. I completely agree. Hopefully I did get to your comment from before, too. I know I'm a little bit behind in some of the comments. But I don't think James Wiseman fits Golden State's system, which is hard. But, yeah. Oh, Texas Sports says, sorry, I didn't clarify. I was saying I don't think Brunson's worth $25 million. I think he'll cool off. Yeah, I agree with that. The one thing that I will say is when he's in New York and if they let him play with the ball in his hands more than Julius Randle and more than RJ Barrett, he will play better than he did in Dallas, like holistically. I think he's an on-ball guard who was playing off the ball and was successful in that role, but I think he's better with the ball in his hands. And I think he could average 20 points a game. I do. But again, the question isn't, what's his individual numbers? It's how much does he help the team win as their lead point guard. And for me, that's a little bit more cloudy. So thanks for the clarification. Sorry, I misunderstood your comment too. It's hard because I'm bouncing back and forth between topics a lot. So sometimes, I'm trying to take my best guess at what the comment was about. But Texas Sports, thanks for that. And thanks also for all the comments on the channel. I know sometimes you and I disagree on stuff, but it's always fun. That's the whole point of the channel too, is to discuss sports, even if we don't agree. That's my favorite thing, honestly, in the entire world, is to talk about basketball. So hopefully, you guys enjoy it, even when I disagree with you or you disagree with me. It's all in good fun. Chris says, who's the top team with the youngest core? I would say probably, if I can't include the Mavericks because they have a 23-year-old Luka Doncic, I would say the Pistons. They have Cade, they have Jaden Ivey now, Jalen Duren. All three of those players I'm really high on. Sadiq Bey's good, and Isaiah Stewart's a solid backup big. Marvin Bagley was a good shot in the dark for them. I feel really, really solid about where Detroit's at long term. I think that, with what Troy Weaver inherited 3 years ago when he took over, it's a remarkable job he's done. Obviously, a little bit of help in there and a few bad decisions. Killian Hayes, anyone? But ultimately, the Pistons are in a really good spot. I think there's other teams, though, that you could make an argument for as well. Travis says, think the Mavs do a sign and trade with the Knicks and get Fournier and Rose back, or be better off with the trade exception? I think the trade exception would be way better than either of those two players. Rose, interesting, but the Knicks won't trade him. I think the trade exception is the best route for Dallas. I don't want Evan Fournier. I really don't. Athens says, what's the floor and ceiling of John Wall at this point? Well, the floor is he's injured and doesn't play. The ceiling is a similar level of play to Reggie Jackson, which is a really good get on the minimum for LA. So I think the Clippers did well getting him. I don't think it's as big of a deal as like pushing them over the top. I think it could help them get there. But it's not like all of a sudden they're just awesome, right? Flex says Trae Young can play more off ball. Also, it's going to be hard to double team him when you don't have the ball. Exactly. That's the point. That's why getting another playmaker here who can handle it a bit and take some pressure off of Trae Young is not only good for Atlanta when Ice Trae's out of the game, but it's really good for them even when Trae Young's in the game, because now there's two players that teams are like, oh, well, let's circle him and let's circle him. And the moment you have more players that need to get circled during a scouting report, means you're probably a pretty good team. Blake here says Brunson isn't worth 125 mil. He showed up in 3 playoff games. Not gonna lie, Spencer did better than him in their whole playoff run. I disagree with that. And I'm a Mavs fan. I watch them very closely. I watch every team closely, to be honest. I watch every single team. I have NBA League Pass, and it's my most favorite pastime is watching NBA basketball. So trust me, I know here Dinwiddie played well. Dinwiddie had some really huge moments. But Brunson was just the better player between the two. But that's not a knock at Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie played well. AJ here says that Charlotte pick is top 16 protected next year, so it doesn't help them try to get the French center. Thank you for that. I do usually have all the picks memorized, but with how recently the draft was, some of the stuff's a little foggy in my head. This week alone, I have been live now. And within the last week, I've been live for, I think, a total of 20 hours. So my brain is a little mush as well at this point. And I've worked the last 2 days. I worked at my actual job for about 21 hours in the last 2 days. So I'm kind of running on no energy here, but ultimately we're doing our best. Texas Sports says this content is my favorite channel. The mock drafts are the best. Thank you, Texas. Appreciate that. Awesome viewer as well. So definitely appreciate that. Mighty Messer says Clippers are fun. Wild cards, if they're all healthy in the playoffs, watch out for them as the favorites. That's exactly how I agree. It's hard to bet on them. It's really hard if I were to put money down. If someone told me, hey, you have to bet $1,000 on them, I'd say, oh, I feel a little sick to my stomach about that. But if in a perfect world where everyone stays healthy, there's no knee injuries, knock on wood, the Clippers are really dangerous. They're really, really good. Essential says if Brunson stays with Dallas, do they move Dinwiddie, Bertans, or Hardaway Jr.? If Brunson stays, I think that they would try and move Hardaway, which is unfortunate because Hardaway is the best player between Dinwiddie and Bertans and him. But that's ultimately the situation. I think Hardaway would probably be the one that goes, which I do not like. Mighty Master says 58 draft picks over tampering. I know, right? The young players, the young prospects are the ones who got, the punishment, really, not the NBA teams. Norman wants to know, what do you think Jaden Hardy's rookie stat line be? His is the hardest to project because I do not have any indication on how much he's going to play, and I think it's really going to be dependent on what happens with Jalen Brunson right now. I'm going to guess 7 points a game, 2 assists a game, and 2 rebounds a game on like 42% from the field and 34% from 3. So pretty low-level numbers, but ultimately I think it's good enough for who is for, right? I'm trying to take care of the bots. Devion, sorry about that. I'm going through the comments trying to take care of them. Gary says, is Trae Young on the trade block now, in your opinion? No, not at all. The goal there in Atlanta for Travis Schlenk and management is to have Dejounte and Trae Young playing together, and I think it's a really good fit. RP Lucid says, assuming Collins stays and they adding DJ, the Hawks are going to be scary next year. Secondary ball handler is exactly what Trae needed. I completely agree. They need another guy, and they need to get better defensively, and Dejounte is a step in the right direction there. Jamal, welcome to the channel. Jamal watches a ton of the content here. Shout out to you, Jamal. Says Miles Turner and Brogdon for Ayton. Too much money, or money doesn't match, but I've seen a few things saying this. The money would match theoretically when you look at the fact that Ayton maybe signs a max, and then maybe Phoenix gives up the rights to, they didn't extend a qualifying offer to Aaron Holiday today, actually. So that doesn't work that way. There's certain niche examples here where Ayton's money could work if they give him a specific contract with, whether it's, there has to be certain stipulations in it with maybe a trade kicker and some stuff. It would be expensive to Indiana. But most of those reporters too don't really understand how the salary cap work. I'm not trying to slam anybody. I don't know who specifically has written this. But there's a lot of times that when I have read stuff in the past, which I typically don't anymore, reading stuff just kind of, I feel like, nulls my brain a little bit. Sometimes, now some of it is useful, but you have to be careful about who you're reading from. Some people just don't know how the trade rules actually work. So be careful with what you're reading, I think is my biggest note for that. Alex says, is Zach LaVine to Dallas possible? Yes, financially it is. There's, when there's a will, there's a way for a lot of stuff. But I don't think it's going to happen. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Zhao says, Pistons, getting some Pistons hype in the chat. If you're a Pistons fan in here, let's get some Pistons hype in the chat right now. Go ahead, drop it in the comment section right now. Chan says, what do the Celtics do with Aaron Nesmith? Is he a bust? Sort of. He is sort of a bust, given where they took him in the lottery. He hasn't lived up to that, but I think there's stuff in there. So that's kind of my thought. Anthony Manzano says, Utility Sports, I didn't expect our conversation about Nikola Jovic on Twitter to get so much attention. 100 people like the tweets of our... Really? Interesting. Well, I'm glad that a lot of people got the attention. We're growing our Twitter following, so Anthony, hopefully you are as well from that tweet. Gerald says, you got to admit Killian has had some terrible circumstances happen rookie year as a pandemic, gets no preseason or training camp, then is hurt for most of the year, and we draft Cade. Yes, I agree. And also one terrible situation was that he couldn't shoot a basketball coming into the draft. I think that's one that a lot of people overlooked, just like they did with Emmanuel Mudiay and Frank Ntilikina, because all of these overseas prospects who are a little bit bigger, guards who can really pass the basketball and sometimes defend really well, there's always that shooting aspect where they just don't shoot the ball well. And Killian Hayes, unfortunately, fell into that. I did not like Killian Hayes in his draft. I saw him nowhere near a lottery-level talent, and I gave the Pistons an F when they drafted him because I said that they should have taken Tyrese Halliburton. I think that has aged really well. And look at Halliburton's situation. You can't say Halliburton's is much easier. Obviously, Halliburton's been healthy, which helps, and that is a big difference, Gerald. I do completely agree still. But Halliburton had to play with De'Aaron Fox, and then they drafted Davion Mitchell right behind him, and then he gets traded. And he's excelled throughout the course of that. Now, is everything going to work out for Detroit because they have Ivy and Cade, and they've really rebounded well from that decision? Yes, of course. And that one decision, drafting Killian Hayes, is not going to be the death of their franchise because other stuff has worked out, obviously. As you can tell, if you've been with me, and I think, Gerald, you've been watching the content for quite a while, 24 months ago, I was probably the most pessimistic person in the world when it came to Detroit. When they drafted Killian Hayes, I thought, oh boy, this team is in trouble. And then they got the first overall pick, and I started coming around. I'm like, I really like Cade. If they draft Cade, everything's going to be fine because they got Cade Cunningham. And then this year, I went from being, okay, they're in a good spot to, wow, they're in a great spot because they got Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren in one draft. So, stuff always changes. That's the awesome part about the NBA. Something looks a certain way, and then 1 year later, the entire outlook is completely different. So, and really, that's one of the things here is Killian just, if he doesn't score the ball, he's limited. But ultimately, Gerald, I'm reading what you said here. The wishful thinking, I'm all for wishful thinking. I hope that Josh Green for the Mavs can just all of a sudden turn around and learn how to shoot the basketball. I hope so. Will it happen? Probably not, but you always got to keep the hope up, right? Especially when you're a fan of a team. There's no reason to be super pessimistic. My job here at Utility Sports is to be pessimistic. And this is all 258 of you here. I'm really excited to share this with you guys. This is something I've thought for a long time. If you can't be pessimistic, or at least like really realistic and really hone in on some of the issues with certain teams and some of the issues with specific players, it really makes the game boring. If you say everybody's good or everybody's great, it really diminishes what real greatness or really good players actually are in the league. Killian Hayes has some really good elements to his game, but there's a lot of inherent flaws as well. And he's just the poster boy example for me right now. I don't hate Killian Hayes, but I've been harsh on him. I've been way harsher than any other YouTuber. I'm sure I probably talked about Killian Hayes way more than any other YouTuber, honestly. Including Detroit YouTubers, because I don't know. I feel like I've been covering a lot of Detroit basketball the last 6 months as well. But with Killian Hayes, like Imagine if for a whole year I was hyping him up saying, oh, he's going to be so good, so good, so good. And then they draft Cade Cunningham, and then I'm going, oh, Cade's so good, so good, so good. And I'm saying the same things about Cade that I said about Killian Hayes. First of all, that's not analysis. That's not actually breaking down what you're seeing. And it's not really fun. If you can't have fun talking about some of the flaws in another player and then using comparison to say, oh, look at how much better Cade Cunningham is than pretty much any other young guard in the league for the most part, because he does all of these elite things, that's really where you get to better levels of thinking and higher intuition, and you go through and really knock some of the negatives and then also uplift some of the positives, because there's elements that are true for both. Look at Derek White for Boston. Can't really shoot the basketball either. He's a situational shooter, though, makes some big shots at big moments, and then he makes a lot of other plays. And if Killian Hayes can play into that role, there's a role in the league for him, and there's definite value. Jonesy said, what are all the moves you can see the Spurs make after the Dejounte trade? That's kind of a loaded question. It kind of depends on what they want to do. I think the first thing they'll do is look to buy out Danilo Gallinari. Leonardo says, you think Wembanyama will truly be generational? Yes, sort of. Generational is a hard word to use for me, because if you're a generational player, it literally means you're the best player of the generation. And I think Luka Doncic is going to be a better player than Wembanyama his entire career. But in terms of like drafting him, the kid's a giraffe. And I know a lot of people use the word unicorn. I've used it before for a special player. I talked about Chet Holmgren that way. Wembanyama is a giraffe. The amount of length on this guy, he's 7'3", can handle, he is really a special player. He really is. We're going to have a scouting profile breakdown on him in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to really deep dive into the 2023 draft this summer. So there's going to be a lot of good NBA content for you guys to really, ingest when we're in the offseason and take in. So hopefully you guys are excited for that. I suppose a Rudy Gobert trade is dead as well. I don't think any of that is going to happen. Ministry says, I enjoyed your analysis as well. Thank you. Zhao says this will be Killian's last year in the league. I don't think so quite, but Mighty Master says, very fun channel. Sheldon is not short of knowledge and opinions or content. Glad I stumbled on the marathon live feed for the draft. Mighty, glad that you did as well. You've been awesome in here. It's been really, really great having you. Trevor Newman says you should appoint a mod. Plan is to take care of that at some point. I've got some people already in mind. Haven't really reached out to anybody yet. But we have to talk some things through here on the channel as well. Gerald says he's the best. Messer, love his live streams. Thank you so much, Gerald. You guys are the best. Honestly, this is more about you guys than me. Imagine if there's no comments here and I'm going through trying to answer comments. My content, I'd have to just kind of talk about whatever. And, sometimes I do that. And I do go on my little mini rants about Killian Hayes or, about flexibility and that kind of stuff. Or all of a sudden I'm talking about Victor Wembanyama and comparing him to animals, talking about how he's, a giraffe or whatever. But I really do appreciate you guys. It's honestly just as much you as it is me, in terms of, making the live streams fun, engaging, and enjoyable. So, hopefully you guys do enjoy. I wanted to watch some live draft stuff. So search for just live channels, hit the jackpot here, like his other guy too, Utility, angle of all sports. And that's the goal. That's actually why we, named it Utility Sports. And I feel really positive about what we're building. So Mighty Messer, make sure you stay tuned for all the other stuff in the future. I'm sure you will, because I'm really excited about everything we've got planned. Troy Dilworth says, how long until Tari Eason starts with the Rockets? Do you see him going to the G League for a bit? He could play in the G League for a little bit. Most rookies do. Last year I said about Sharif Cooper and everyone got upset at me saying, you think Sharif Cooper's... Yes, I think Sharif Cooper would need the G League, and he did. He did need it. But ultimately, Tari's going to play a little bit in the G League. Most rookies do. And I think probably starts with the Rockets. The issue is they drafted Jabari Smith. So Tari maybe doesn't start with the Rockets for a long time. It's really, there's no timetable for when he could start, really, I think, because they drafted someone at the same position of him, third overall, which complicates things. But, if someone's injured, he could start in their place right away. Lamont, Pistons. Let's get some Pistons hype. That's what that's from. Thank you, Lamont. 250 likes would be super cool. Yes, it would. Norin, thank you so much. Chuckman says, what was the motivation of the Spurs being so anxious to move off Murray? Teams were trying to acquire these types of players in the draft last week. Yeah, that's what I'm a little surprised about, why they were so willing to do that. I think part of them internally believe that maybe Murray won't play that well again, which statistically he might, but it's not like he's going to all of a sudden get less skilled. So, statistically, maybe he'll never have another 21-9-8 season. But if he has 18, 8, and 7 every single year, it's pretty much the same thing. It really is. Virus says, as a Spurs fan, should I be on suicide watch? All Brian Wright had to do was move Lonnie Jakob and a pick for Ayton, and Spurs would have been nice. You don't need to be on any concerns like that. You guys are in a good spot. Don't worry, Spurs fans. You still got young talent. So, I gave it a D grade. I didn't think it was a good move, but ultimately at this point, there's a lot of other stuff that, there's worse things that have happened in the NBA, which isn't the best thing to say in comparison, but for Mamadou, I don't think you were here when I went through it, so I'll kind of preface it real quick. I gave an A to the Atlanta Hawks. They got a really good young player who's on a cheap contract still at this point, making only $16.5 million next year, $17.5 million the year after, and he's a really good fit next to Trae Young. I feel like it's a really good move. It helps them with their transition defense a lot, which I think was one of the biggest flaws for Atlanta this past year. And then for the flip side here, for San Antonio, I think the biggest concern I have is they didn't get a young player back. So I gave them a D grade. They didn't get anyone who I believe in yet at this point. It's kind of just a blank slate here for the Spurs. They got Danilo Gallinari, who I would be surprised if he plays a game for them. And if he does, it doesn't really matter to me. Ultimately, I'm not in love with the move. PJ Cruz says, love this for the Hawks, hashtag Detroit basketball. PJ, been watching the channel for a long time. Shout out to you as well. PJ, I am dumb. Some boy says, what do you think about the Hawks doing a sign and trade for Ayton? Definitely not out of the realm of possibility. I think if they're going to make a move, that's what it's going to be. Amber, welcome to the stream. For those who do not know, Meep is my girlfriend. So let's get some Meep hype in the chat. Everyone go comment Meep right now. Let's get some Meep hype here to end the live stream. Big shout out to her. She got me some awesome birthday gifts. She got me an awesome James Harden shirt with like a little bit of an animated picture of him. Looked pretty sweet. She got me a Luka Doncic and Dirk Nowitzki shirt, which was sweet. Love that as well. Then she got me an awesome NBA light up sign basically for my room. There's a picture of that on the channel, but definitely W girlfriend. That's what I'm saying. Let's get some Meep hype in the chat. Meeps are peeps. Yes, she is the best. So everyone give a little bit of hype to Meep. She is absolutely the best. Love that woman. So huge shout out to her. Damir says, I think Hawks are going to trade Trae for someone. Just seems to make sense here. I do not think that Trae Young's going to get traded. We are going to stay live here for just another couple minutes. Interesting here, Troy Brown Jr. does not get a qualifying offer, so he becomes an unrestricted free agent. But yes, W girlfriend, 110%. I'm trying to think of a way here. Actually, I got a way. Let me pull up the pictures of the gift she got me, because I have them on my phone, and I will show them to you through my phone, which is obviously not the best way of doing things, but let's get some hype in here, because look at what she hooked me up with. Let me take this off so you guys can really see it. She got me that NBA sign. Isn't that sick? Look at that. That is so sweet. Jabari says, Woj needs to announce Cam Reddish to the Rockets. Would be crazy. Yeah, and I do not think Trae Young is getting flipped. I'm getting Twitter notifications out here now. Excuse me, guys. But yeah, that's the sign. Isn't that awesome? I absolutely love it. So, again, Meep, huge shout out to her. She's the best. And we got more bots in here. All the bots in the world. Not really sure why that is a thing that we have to deal with now. But again, huge thank you to Amber, and a huge thank you to you guys. Again, I'm going to be probably shutting down the live stream here. Yes, nice little Jerry West logo, and yes, it's an L to have some of the bots in here. I don't understand why that's a thing. It's been a thing in our past few live streams. We're going to get some moderators figured out just to take care of some of that stuff. But yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy today's live stream. Again, that was my thoughts on Dejounte Murray getting traded to the Atlanta Hawks. Again, real quick, for those who are watching as a live replay, I think that Dejounte Murray getting traded to the Atlanta Hawks was an A for Atlanta and a D for San Antonio. Most outlets are going to tell you that it was probably an A and a B, or an A- and a B+, because they all like to say, things that are really safe so that they don't upset either fan base. But ultimately for me, I'm going to tell you what I really think. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. And I think the Spurs could have done better. Kiza says Spurs seem to be really high on Primo. What do you think about him? I like him. I think there's going to be a lot of room for him to grow for sure as a player. I think if he really figures out how to finish around the rim a little bit more efficiently, which is something most young guards struggle with, he'll be a good young player. Matt Ahern gives us some thumbs up. Let's get some thumbs up in the chat and also go smash that like button. And Kyler, here we're going to be answering the last question. Do you think OKC could possibly sign and trade Lou Dort? No, I think they're going to work out a long-term extension with him. What they're trying to do right now, Kyler, is avoid what's going on with Dallas and Brunson. The fact that they declined his team option, which was a really cheap, good team option, is a sign that they want to keep restricted rights on him and lock him in for the long term. So I think they're going to actually keep him. Thank you, everyone, all so much. And yes, the actual trade did go down for the deal between the Atlanta Hawks and the San Antonio Spurs. There's the details. Thanks again so much, guys, for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be live all day tomorrow for NBA free agency, so come stop in, say hi. Love all 200 of you awesome people. Again, thanks so much for hopping into the stream. Really do appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.